Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain. Are you really ready for automation? Welcome to this special presentation by St. Onge Company. Quick reminder, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Now, the pressure to automate distribution center operations is intensifying as businesses struggle to meet rising customer expectations for faster, more accurate, and cost-effective deliveries. Automation offers a powerful solution to this challenge, but are you ready for it? Today, we're going to delve into the key benefits of DC automation, the various types of solutions that are available, and the factors involved in assessing what's right for you. So allow me to introduce our expert for today. Norm Sains is partner and managing director with St. Onge Company. With 32 years of experience in distribution center projects, he's worked extensively on facility planning, automation assessments, capital cost analysis, labor planning, material handling equipment sourcing, and implementation management. Norm has also shared his expertise through multiple published articles and presentations at industry trade shows and webinars, focusing on various distribution-related topics. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Norm Sains for the presentation. Norm, take it away.
Thank you very much, Bob, and I'm excited to give this presentation today and share what I know about automation. And what I put together here real quickly is an agenda that we'll cover in today's session. I'm going to start off with just an overview of automation, kind of get our feet wet there and talk about what's going on in the industry and what topics are really important on automation. Then we're going to talk about some real stories. This part is not meant to scare you, but it's meant to give you some real stories on automation that have been implemented that we're aware of, and try to start getting you to understand if you're ready for automation or not. Then we're going to talk about selection of automation and how you go about making the decision on what's right for you and if you're ready for that automation or not. And then we're going to have a great panel discussion. Bob's going to ask me a bunch of questions. I'm going to do my best to answer all of them, and we open it up, as Bob said, to attendee questions, and we encourage you to ask, submit your questions so we can really answer what's on your mind today regarding this topic. So as an overview, what are we talking about today? Well, people attending today, they're either in a manual operation, they're in a mechanized operation, or they're already automated. But what we're talking about is how do you make the decision on whether you're ready or not to go from a manual conventional to a mechanized or to a fully automated, or even if you're automated, what do you do next? So that's kind of what we're here to talk about today is all the topics regarding getting ready for automation and if you're ready. So why are companies actually looking at automation? Bob hinted to a lot of these topics already, and that's labor cost increasing. I think everyone knows that is an opportunity. And what does automation do for you? Well, it can drive annual labor savings up to 50%. I mean, it all depends on where you are today. Like I said, if you're manual today, then you could probably get to almost 50% labor savings. If you're in a mechanization stage right now, you got conveyors and some pick modules, and you want to put a goods-to-person system in, maybe you're going to see 25, 30% savings. It really depends on the analysis, but automation can definitely drive labor savings. Also, if you're just looking for a good return on capital, that's what automation is really an attractive area to look at when you're trying to decide what to do with your business and whether you want to make a good return on capital. The other big topic is space and real estate costs going up and increasing. So you'll see with automation that you can really get more density of storage, increased utilization of your space. So some companies, it's all about trying to get more in their facilities and get their space costs down in their operations or across their network. The other is a competitive labor market. This is probably one of the top things. There are millions of job openings and a lot of opportunity for employees these days, the workforce, to find where they want to work. This unfortunately means there's a lot of competition for the labor, and there's high turnover rates that companies are experiencing. And so if you want to kind of lessen the reliance on labor, especially at peak, this is a big reason that companies are saying, maybe I need to automate more. So that's a big one. Also, just simply, you need to get more out of your operations. You need to increase the throughput and the productivity of your space. Automation obviously is a big area of getting more throughput. We'll talk about some of the throughput rates that you can get out of different operations at a high level, but you'll see obviously that automation does drive productivity gains in the facility. And then simply complexity of your operation. There's companies we're seeing that have increase in SKU base, changing storage requirements, needing to handle more each pick with e-commerce operations. So that increase in SKU count and complexities of their operation. The next one there, order sizes and complexity of those order types that you're dealing with inside the four walls. It's becoming harder and harder to manage with manual operations, with just plain mechanization. It's time to start looking at automation. And then just overall business competition in the marketplace. There's a lot of competition out there for what your products are that you're selling to consumers. And so, automation can definitely help you, get better service levels to your customers, be more accurate, have more on-time shipping, less damage. So there's all these valuable things you can get out of automation that helps people, and that's why they're looking at automation. And the last thing is just the good news here is, and maybe the challenge a little bit is, there is so much automation to consider. There is automation that's developing, becoming more flexible, more scalable, more affordable. We'll talk a little bit about ROIs in a little bit. So luckily, there are a lot of things that you can look at and consider. The challenge is there are so many things that it can be a little challenging and daunting on what direction to go. So we're going to hopefully answer some of those questions today. So is it right for you? Are you ready for automation? And here's just some questions, very relatable things that I just went through, but some things that you might ask yourself. Are you experiencing throughput constraints and rising labor costs, right? Things we just talked about. Are your current rates below industry average and dropping? Are you really just not able to get what you need to get out of your current operation in terms of throughput? Do you have that high turnover rate and difficulty finding and keeping people? That's what we talked about a minute ago. Are you experiencing all these things? And really, have you already, and we're a proponent of this for sure, have you already done everything you can in your current facility with the level of technology and equipment that you have today in your processes and your systems? Have you pushed the envelope as much as you can? And you're really at a point where, man, we've done everything we can. I think we need to move to the next step. And that's really a thing that people are facing and ready to look at automation. And again, the next question, very similar, is, are you completely manual today? Obviously, if you are, the next step is maybe mechanization and pushing into automation and goods to person. Do you have, and this one's tough. I mean, I try to put a number of people limit, but really, honestly, it's, if you have 5 people in your facility, you probably aren't ready for automation yet. But if you're a small operation, you got 25, 30, 40 people, that's enough. I mean, that's enough if you're really needing to get an ROI, which we'll talk about, whether ROIs are something companies still need to achieve and what levels they are. But if you have that many people, you have multiple shifts, you probably can justify automation, especially what's available today on the market. We'll share it with you here in a minute. Also, again, we talked about throughput rates. If you're really looking at your business and your growth and you're trying to get 500 lines per hour, again, that's a fine line, right? It could be 300 lines per hour. But generally, if you're finding yourself in the 300 to 500 plus, and you're needing to get that kind of productivity out of an individual operator, that's difficult to do without automation that's available in the marketplace today. And we talked about storage density. So are you underutilizing your facilities today? Are you not using all the vertical cube space? And do you have health and safety concerns with your employees? A lot of ergonomic issues and other things that are affecting your employees. Believe it or not, we'll talk about this. Automation, while some people can be afraid of it, it can actually make the employee's job easier, more comfortable, and safer. So also struggling at peak. Last question you can ask yourself, are you really struggling with peak and getting the people you need in the building and be able to ramp up and train and onboard these people in order to handle throughput at peak? Just finished going through peak season. Maybe that's why you joined today. So that can be a big reason. So I put all these questions up here, and how many do you answer yes? If you answered all of them yes, and probably you need automation, you're ready for it. If you answered even a few of them, I think you're ready to take kind of the next step in your automation journey and considering what's out there. So now this section is really to have you think and challenge if you believe you're ready or not, because these companies, I'm going to give you some examples of some stories, thought they were ready, and maybe they even were ready, but still things happen. And so this is more of I call it cautionary tales to think about when you're considering automation and where you are currently in your journey. And that's really what it's about. Is I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to give you some real examples of what we've seen in the marketplace. And so we're going to go through just a few of these, and then we're going to jump into kind of the equipment that's out there and how to make good decisions on what your next what automation you might think about. So this example of a story is a shuttle system. It was installed, and during the go live, though, operators, as they were starting to set it up, noticed or heard vibration, and the totes actually were bouncing around enough where they were getting misaligned. And this was obviously not an ideal situation. There was a lot of manual intervention that was needed in order to get totes back aligned, and adjustments ultimately needed in the racking to get the vibration out. Obviously, that impacts throughput, even safety. And so, how does something like this happen? This is more of a story about equipment design and testing, as you see it kind of in the highlight there. You're going to hear a lot about testing because it is probably one of the most important things. I mean, hard to say what is the most important. I mean, you need to design the right solution. You need to have a good ROI. You need to go through the process of planning. But once you've done all that well and you've specified and got the equipment you need and you're ready to install, you need to make sure you're prepared and you've done a proper amount of factory acceptance testing and you've done user acceptance testing. In this case, more testing really needed to be done, obviously, on the rack to make sure it was going to be stable. And also, was the facility slab and levelness and flatness checked out in this facility before the rack was installed? So that's kind of what should have happened here is more equipment design, factory acceptance testing, and testing more upfront in the installation process before you reach the go live state. Another example of equipment kind of design opportunities. What happened here, this was more of an autonomous lift truck environment for put away of full pallets into racking. And this rack was installed to interact with pushback rack, drive-in rack, and floor storage. But regarding the pushback and the drive-in rack, which we can talk about a little bit later, I'm sure there'll be some questions regarding this. This is a pretty hot application right now is interacting with racking and dense racking when it comes to using autonomous lift trucks. But when this system was up and assumed ready to go, what was happening is these AGVs were scraping up against and running into the driving rack as they were going in to put away a pallet or retrieve it. So it was pretty much the driving rack that was the problem in terms of a proper alignment. And obviously, this is a throughput issue, a safety issue, a damaged of equipment issue. So how does something like this happen? Again, it's that complete testing of AGVs. It may sound overkill, but if you're putting the system in, to me, you want to look and test every lane and make sure that it is aligned properly with the AGV equipment and that you have everything, because there's tolerances. When you go through the racking design and the specifications and the interaction with the AGVs or autonomous lift trucks, there's very tight tolerances that need to be met and need to be tested so you're not going live and realizing that you have a problem when you're thinking you're ready to go live and be operational. So again, equipment design, importance, testing importance, floor flatness could also be a possible opportunity here. Another example is control software. So whether it's a WCS controlling a specific application or whether it is the WES controlling more functionality in the warehouse. This company is putting in a shuttle system. The control system essentially failed during the functionality of being able to handle the orders and allocate orders in the right mix so that the system would perform as expected. What's a big thing here is, again, the testing and the design of the control software. It's super critical. And most of the projects we might get pulled into late to look at are regarding kind of the control software not properly managing the operation effectively. So you want to have this done up front. You want that testing to be done before you go live. And you want really a lot of focus on and transparency with the vendor on what it is that their software is going to do. And we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in the questions and answers, because it's a pretty important topic to really align what your systems are going to do and what the control software is going to do from the supplier, and have that span of control very defined and understood and managed properly during the design, configuration, and go live. So kind of related is the control software reporting. This was a company that was putting a shuttle system in that was feeding a put wall design. And as it turned out, we got brought in, we're way late again, but it was more like they were not understanding why they weren't getting the throughput. It was just a mystery to them. And what they realized after they began to try to inspect and figure out what was going on is they really had no reporting tools. So somehow the client wasn't given the right amount of access to pulling out various reports so they could better understand what was happening in the system. So this, again, it's important to make sure you're documenting and agreeing with the vendor on what kind of control software they're going to have, what kind of reporting they're going to get, what kind of functionality, seeing and testing and reviewing those reports to make sure you're able to work with this system long term, understand what it's doing, what it should be doing, and how to tweak and make operational or system and technical changes ongoing so that you're able to really run the operation and understand what's going on with something you purchased. I know there's a lot here. I'm going to go through a couple more. Preventive maintenance. This one's interesting because, I mean, this is a 20-year-old ASRS system, right? And it is great that it's still running it after 20 years, right? And most of them are running. But it started hitting throughput issues, downtime, and again, they weren't sure what was happening. We went and actually built a simulation model, but we uncovered a lot of kind of things that could have been prevented through a stronger preventive maintenance program. So if you're going to invest in this kind of technology, make sure you understand the ongoing maintenance that's required, whether you're going to do that in-house, whether you're going to hire outside people to do it. Make sure you have that established plan that everyone's going to follow and run. So you continue. I mean, they got 20 years and they're still going to get maybe another 10 years out of it. But it gave me kind of an example, or reminded me of an example of how important preventive maintenance plans are. And really, when you're looking at the full cost of the system, that you're factoring that in ongoing. The item master. You can't have kind of a real story example without the item master factor coming up. Super important to have a very, very high quality item master. So this company, you know, a lot of times clients or companies are just trying to go pretty fast. They're trying to get a new system. They're excited. Maybe their item master's lacking, but they still move forward, take averages, and do what they can. This was a put to light system. But what happened over time when they ended up using kind of average data on sizing, the system was getting overloaded. The put wall system was not functioning. It was getting overloaded in the zones. Turned out they weren't having the right size cubbies. They didn't have enough large cubbies, medium cubbies. They just didn't configure the put wall system, as it turns out, the right way. But the reason this happened was because they really had incomplete item master data. So I can't stress how important it is to capture that data starting today if you don't have it. There's equipment out there that can let you do that fairly easily on the dock, have an inventory control people managing it, but you got to get solid item master data in order to design the right automated system, in order for it to run effectively. So I can't stress the importance of item master quality data. So that was a lot. Hopefully you aren't too scared. But these are just cautionary tales, kind of questions to ask yourself if you're ready or not. So kind of in summary, these are some of the things we just covered, right? Do you have an ROI? Do you have a strong use case for automation? Do you have poor item master data? I just went through that. So do you have the required data to basically size the system? If you don't, you need to start thinking about capturing that data. When you're looking at the products you're handling, are your packages a good candidate for being automated, being handled on automation or not? Now, I would say these days, I mean, there's unit sorters handling all kind of packaging. There's totes that are integrated into systems. Medium to large, even items can be handled through automation, but you still need to understand your products and their weights and really understand if those things can be automated or not. Pallet loads or bad pallets. Don't go in thinking that your pallets are probably fine. You need to really understand if they are going to be able to handle being automated and handled in a system, and factor that into the design and the cost. Because believe it or not, these pallets can add up to a large investment. So have you kind of assessed your pallets and make sure that they are, and your cases for that matter. When you're getting the rates from the vendors, vet those out. Make sure you just don't go with what's on the brochure. Check into references, go to some sites, related installs, really make sure that the throughput that's being discussed with you, that I'll even share with you some today here in 1 second actually, are rates that are really achievable with your products, your size of your goods, and that you really thought through that in your analysis. For planning, have you modeled and simulated your requirements? You don't want to go into this without having done your homework, analyzing the proper data, and looked at the future growth of your business, new acquisitions, and everything that goes into planning. So make sure that you have modeled your requirements. Thought it through change management. There is the importance of integrating and involving your workforce in the decision to automate. Are they ready for automation? There is, we'll talk about this, I believe, in the questions and answers usually comes up, to just involve your workforce, consider their input, consider if they're ready to handle automation and work alongside of it. The span of control. Have you really looked at your systems and their capabilities? I suggest you do that right away and look at whether you're capable of integrating with the control software that's out there, and discuss and understand the span of control that you may need to understand when you're going out and deciding whether you're ready to literally hook up to some automation equipment. Proper testing, push that one a little bit, making sure that you got your IT group involved, that they are ready to be a part of the level of testing that's needed to invest in and put in an automated system. I mentioned preventive maintenance. Again, make sure you have a clear plan put in place. The infrastructure, I kind of hinted on this a little bit. Does your building support automation? So is your building ready for automation? So basically, you got to look at your operation, your facilities, get old blueprints, documents, understand your floor levelness and flatness, your slab thickness, your clear height, and don't forget power. This automation takes power. Lift trucks take a lot of power. So you got power in your building no matter what, likely, unless you're all pallet jacks. But what are the power requirements needed for the automation? And do you have substantial or enough power in order to run automation? And then scalability, plan for the future. So there's a lot to think about, a lot to consider in the journey of if you're ready for automation. So that's kind of what this first section was about. But let's assume you're ready. Let's assume you check all the boxes. You're ready to move forward. And so that is what we're going to talk about now, is how do you make the right decisions and select the right technology? So hopefully you're submitting some questions so you can ask away when we get there. And so I'm going to talk a couple slides, and you're going to kind of get the feel for what automation makes the most sense based on your situation and what's the right application for you. So this chart, a little busy, covers a lot of equipment. But basically, when you look at this, you've got efficiency and accuracy and labor savings going from low to high on the left side. So it's basically from, if you're manual and you're pushing things around, you're going to have low labor, and you're going to have high labor savings if you go to automation. So low savings to high savings, the more you put in automation. But you can't forget that you have an investment and a lead time and complexity and ongoing costs that increases as you put in more automation. So obviously it's a simpler environment with manual. You get mechanized, it becomes a little more investment, a little more lead time. And then when you get automated, things get a little bit higher in automation and they get higher in ongoing maintenance costs. Lead time, some might argue, um, because the lead time for a lot of AMRs and AGVs and a lot of the automation is really quick. It's actually lead times can be actually faster than forklifts these days. So this is really a high level look at across the board from manual to automated, and then flexibility and scalability. So again, this one's a little tricky. Obviously, from years ago, manual operations, there's less infrastructure to move around. It's a lot of flexibility. You can add people, just keep adding people to scale up your operation. As you put in conveyors and structure, it becomes a little less flexible, harder to scale it. I mean, obviously with pick modules, you can go vertical. So we design a lot of four pick modules that have 1 or 2 levels, and then they add a third level. Automation might hurt a little bit saying it this way, because really it can be very scalable, and it can become more flexible. Some automation, a lot more flexible and scalable than others. So, but in general, manual, no infrastructure, automation having more infrastructure, except for those AMR and AGVs, they can be a lot more flexible and scalable. So you can see there's a wide range of equipment, and I'll just summarize those rates again, where if you're looking to only get 100 lines or less per hour out of your employees, these are all kind of employee, single operator employee rates. Manual operations and even manual plus might be enough for you. There's a lot of technology that's been out in the marketplace forever, very proven. And some companies that are very manual today may just need to bump up to more additional conventional solutions like 2 or 3D pallet riders, investing in engineering labor standards, looking at voice and other light technology. But if you need to get into that 300 plus lines per hour per operator, I think that's where we start looking at pick modules and different kind of conveyor and sortation systems, put walls, other kind of dunnage and print and apply equipment. There's a lot of mechanization that might be the next step that you need. And that's all you need. But then if you're really looking for those higher rates and those other pros and cons we talked about earlier about automation and the value and benefits to automation, you may be ready for that next step. Or you might want to skip mechanization and just go straight to automation. There's some blurry lines between these categories. I'm trying to draw some lines, but there's a lot of integration and a lot of hybrid solutions. And just to say, in case I get the question, there's hybrid solutions that use everything you see up here. We've done facilities and seen operations that leverage some manual, some mechanized, and some fully automated goods to person. So it could all work within the 4 walls together as you look to design an operation with automation and with manual. Here's another way of looking at automation and making the right decision for you. So I think I talked a little bit about your products that you're handling. You could be handling full pallets. You could be handling cases. You could be handling eaches or pieces or inner packs, and you could be handling all of it, right? So this chart, this table, whatever you want to call it, is essentially breaking down full pallet, case, and each, and then into 3 more categories underneath each. It's looking at storage of that unit of measure, transporting or moving it around, and then picking or fulfilling. So you've been looking at this now as I've talked, and you can kind of see the obvious, gray is manual, green is mechanized, blue is automation. And you can see that across all of these different categories, there's multiple options from manual through automated. And so you can, with the storage of full pallets, obviously pallet racks, a pallet mold system might be a way to add mechanization and save labor and get more dense. But then the ASRS systems and pallet shuttle systems that are out there and been in use for multiple decades are ways you can store and handle pallets with automation. Now, if you want to move around pallets, obviously lift trucks in every building that I've been in pretty much. There's conveyor, pallet moving conveyor solutions. There's PTV loops. There's AGVs and AMRs that can move unit loads across a facility. Those can even be used to pull tuggers around in manufacturing facilities. And then autonomous lift trucks becoming more and more part of analysis that we do. And then Retrieval, basically put away automated retrieval and storage of pallets. It's kind of the same bucket of lift trucks, pallet mole, moving pallets around, ASRs with a crane type based system, and the pallet shuttle. These are enclosed systems, so basically they're used for storage and they're used for retrieving. So that's the pallet world. The full case and each pick is really where things have progressed over the years, especially the each pick, because that's really where the D2C and those environments are really developing good options. But still on the full case, you have the rack solutions and deck rack. You have shuttles, whether they're 1, 2, or 3 dimensional shuttle systems. And we'll talk. I'm sure I'll get some questions on shuttles. Because there are so many kinds of shuttles. There are linear-based shuttles. There's roaming shuttles. There's all kinds of designs and suppliers for shuttles. It started out as one-dimensional. Now there's 2, 3, even some call it 4-dimensional shuttles that are more like the roaming shuttles that bots actually leave the system. There's auto store, which is really a top-level shuttle. There's some more competitors in that market now. So if you're looking to store and handle cases, those are some solutions. If you're looking to move around and pick cases, it's the lift trucks again. It's the conveyor systems. There's sorter systems. Again, those two have been around for so long and multiple decades. But now we have these AGVs and AMRs in the last decade that continue to develop themselves for handling moving around cases. And then picking, we have the pick to pallet, the old manual way, grabbing a case, putting it on a pallet. We have pick to belt, which is pick it to a conveyor. We have the shuttles, once again, being used to basically bring out as a goods to person solution a case straight to a workstation. We have layer robotics that are more getting in the layer pick environment, grabbing an entire layer. So picking multiple cases, if you will, a whole layer at a time. And there's tons of robotics and options for layer picking. And as I mentioned, it's maybe easy to put this table together, but there's hybrid and integration and different types of solutions that bring these things all together. We did a design that has an ASRS, it has AMRs or AGVs using to pull pallets forward, and then layer robotics system using to grab layers and building pallets, rainbow pallets off of those layer robotic systems. So integrating all this blue technology together is very, very common. And then the each picking, saying a lot of the same things, but we have the shelving usually involved in deck rack, shuttle systems, again, the AMR shelf type solutions for storage. Basically, it holds inventory and brings that shelf forward. For picking, the auto store is a big player in the each and piece area. If you're going to move around and pick eaches and cases and interpacks, you're probably going to use push carts, conveyor. There's the unit sorter, starts to become very attractive to pick eaches. And then you have your AGVs and AMRs and your AMR lifts. There's AMR pick assist options, and I think we'll talk in the questions and answers more about the different technologies that are out there when it comes to AMRs and the so many different options that are attractive right now in this space specifically. And when you're picking orders with eaches, it's pick to cart, it's pick modules, it's put walls that are mechanical, and there's also auto put wall systems that automate the put wall environment. And then all the same shuttles and AMR shelf and lift for picking orders. So this hopefully is another helpful way to break apart the different units of measure that come into play and and how you can make a decision between manual, mechanized, and automation. Now this slide, I'm going to go by quickly because St. Onge is an independent provider. So we don't represent any given provider. We have no firm partnerships. What we do have is experience across the board with a lot of different companies like the one shown here. And what you have to do in selecting a partner is decide what is the functionality you're looking for, what's the application or technology that you're looking for, what's the lead time and the cost and the service that you're looking for. The point here is to point out that there are so many options in the marketplace and a lot of great options and a lot of different flavors of the buckets of technology that there are out there that you want to consider in your journey to picking an automated solution that you feel is right for you. So I know that was a lot, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. So I'm just going to wrap it up here and then hand it to Bob to through some panel discussions he has for me, and then open it up to the attendees for different questions. So identify your need. We talked about each case or layer pick. You want to decide on your partnering strategy. You might have your huge in-house engineering team. You might want to talk to consultants or integrators or go directly to OEM or a combination. So decide what kind of partner strategy you want to have to move forward. Do a feasibility study, estimating the cost, savings, and benefits. Once you identify kind of where your biggest opportunity is to save labor or to shrink your space and become more efficient in your space utilization. Research the technology. I'm telling you, online right now, going to various vendor websites, there are so many YouTube videos. You could literally walk and see through YouTube videos different applications and different use case studies to really get yourself more educated and learning more about what's out there. Touch base with some vendors, look at going on vendor tours, and really go to trade shows and other things that really will get you up to speed more and more on this technology. And if you have the time, plan out kind of a base case, look at your ROI that, where you are today in labor and where you might go with automation, what kind of savings that you can get there. Evaluate different alternatives. It's important to know that there are a lot of one-time costs, and then there's ongoing costs. There's also various strategies to investing and lowering your initial capital investing by using a robot as a service type application called RAS. So there's some interesting new ways to kind of invest in technology and then putting a lot of capital down initially. So some vendors have that as options. Compare, look at your solutions, build out some simulation models if you can, go through a good vetted process of evaluating vendors, come up with a good strategy, consider that change management. So that's kind of a summary. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Bob. I probably talked a lot and a little bit quick, but I'm going to hand it over to you and see what questions that you have for me, Bob.
Thank you, Norm. That was a lot of great information. And even as I am interrogating Norm with my questions, audience members are encouraged to be submitting their questions by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to as many of those as we can, time permitting. So, Norm, you've given some good clues as to the answer to this first question that I'd like to ask you. But with regard to places where automation might fail, what is the number one reason that you would select from all those stories that you told us?
Yeah, I think that just from our experience, what we hear the most is control software and integration with existing systems. That tends to be the biggest challenge. And controls are, as I mentioned, are so important. They need to manage the tasks. They need to communicate with the WMS or the ERP. They need to provide real-time data and information and make decisions ongoing. So control software and the integration to your existing systems, I think that's probably the biggest area to be concerned with and make sure you spend a good amount of time on.
I find it really interesting that of all those stories you told us, very few of them, if any, relate to any problem with the automation itself. It's how you prepare for it. It's what you do in your warehouse to make the automation work for you. So that interesting insights there. Also, you talked a lot. You gave us an extensive slide about getting ready for the journey to automation in your warehouse. Could you select any particular aspects of that journey that you think are especially important for us to keep in mind?
Yeah, I think that you want to be real about going into your operations and deciding where do I need to improve? What is it? Labor savings? Is it service level? Is it storage capacity? How can you improve service to your customer? I mean, this is all about delivering to your customer and increasing market share. And so, what can you do? What do you need to do to improve your service? And so, where are the biggest issues that you have? Is it high labor costs? Is it space and utilization? Is it ergonomics? Is it inventory accuracy, order accuracy? So where are your biggest issues? I think talking to your employees and getting them involved and understanding the issues and the challenges is really going to be important. And I talked about the item master being really important. Making sure, the key thing about being ready and where these systems can fail is just not having the right data to feed into these systems so they can perform as they've been designed and how
Yeah.
they're all amazing. As you mentioned, they're all amazing automated options, and they will work very well. They do need the right data, and they do need the right control software, and they do need the right information, and they need to be fit into the right profile of your business. And so I think all of those things are kind of important in thinking about the next steps.
Anybody who has walked the floor at one of the major material handling shows knows about the temptation to be dazzled by what's out there. And I love the fact that you are causing us to kind of step back and take a rational approach to some of these exciting new solutions out there. ROI is a big deal, Norm, as you know, return on investment, and it can get a lot tighter these days, and companies are a lot less impatient about when that ROI is realized. What kind of ROI are companies looking for right now, and what kind are they achieving?
Yeah, that's a great question. It still does come down a lot of times to ROI and what's important about automation. And it can be costly depending on what it is you're looking at. There are some systems that are not that. Surprisingly, not. They're the same as if you invested in a pick module or some conveyor, right? Um, but sometimes you got to make sure you have the labor that you have the labor today to justify that investment. But what I was going to say is it's not always just labor. Think about the space savings. If you're leasing space across the street and you can get more dense in your building and reduce that operating cost. If you can consolidate operations and reduce your logistics spend by automating and getting things under the same roof, can you reduce your errors and those types of chargebacks that you might be getting? And labor, if you are adding labor and bringing it on, there's a cost to onboarding and training labor. So the ROI, if you do have hundreds of people and you can gather up some of those savings through pure direct labor savings, there's that. But there are other ways to get an ROI. And so ROIs, we work with a lot of companies, and some are I would say most, just to answer your question quickly, is looking at that 20% IRR, internal rate of return, around 20%. It seems to be a target. If you look at simple ROIs, 5-7 years payback is pretty common. But there's still ones that want 2-5 year payback, 2-3 year payback, or 5 year payback. It does kind of it's very specific to that company and what they're looking to achieve in terms of that payback. And where you are in the journey of, if you're very manual, or if you're in the middle of mechanization, you're already pretty efficient. But yeah, most companies still want an ROI. But there are some that will say, you know what, I just need to be less reliant on labor. They got burned during COVID. They're concerned about it, and they don't need a really attractive ROI. We do have some companies that are there, but most are still looking for that 20% IRR and 5-7 years back to back.
Among that very busy slide of all the things you have to keep in mind to prepare for automation properly, it ends with change management, but we also know that's far from the least important among the points you need to address. How then are workers reacting to more, or just that general fear of automation that moving into the warehouse?
Yeah, that's certainly something that you hear about or is talked about. I think most are adapting really well, and actually are interested and excited when automation becomes part of their operations. It allows more cross training and allows them to learn a trade or a technical skill they may not have had before, and make the work environment more safe. AMRs and AGVs have done a lot to make their a safe work environment. So safety is important, but I think that the technology has come very, very far and is a top priority for the companies we talk to. So that really alleviates that. And I think you mentioned change management.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of it, is getting them involved, getting them excited and interested, seeing what problems automation can solve for them to make their job more easier to be working in and be safer. And so I don't know. I feel like it hasn't been a deterrent. It's been more of an exciting thing for workers to be introduced to and work around and get experience with the automation.
Yeah. Okay, at this point, I really would like to bring the audience into the discussion. We have some excellent questions already posted here, and again, even as we are answering them, we do have. So please continue to post your questions in the Q&A box, and we will address as many of those as we can, time permitting. So here's one. How do you demonstrate specific impacts and outputs of the various automation solutions a client may be considering? Are you able to model this in any way?
That's a great question. Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, I think this actually speaks maybe to that business about ROI. If you can demonstrate the effectiveness of a model before you take it on, you can address that question more easily. But the questioner themselves is saying, how do you demonstrate these specific impacts and the outputs of the various automation solutions a client may be considering? Can you
Yeah,
model this in some way?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, simulation modeling is what I think the answer is to that question, and it's very important. You're going to make a big investment to think about simulating because that's real. That's your data. That's your operational data being modeled to the exact application that you're sourcing and considering. And you can run that simulation. You can test it with increasing volumes and see if there's congestion points, see if there's turning radius issues, see if there are throughput issues. So I would say that's the best part of simulating is being able to test the inputs and outputs and see if you're going to get what you're looking for and what you're planning to get out of the operation. It's a good question.
Yeah. Here's a question about a particular vertical that is especially important in DC automation. What is the most common or obvious automation solution for car parts fulfillment to improve packing rates and quality?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, automotive industry, parts, electronics, those are all space, small goods, more or less. I mean, there's large to medium to small goods, but all of those goods to person technologies, there's really not one technology that fits that industry only, in my opinion. There's all the AMR is pick assist solutions. We are part of one automated company that put in that type of system, the AMR pick assist, like the Six Rivers or the Locust type solution. We've had clients that have used shuttle systems, whether they be one dimensional or the roaming type systems to handle automotive part type solutions. I mean, back in the day, decades ago, when I first started out, horizontal carousels were a big automated solution that was used in the parts world. And that still is out there in a lot of operations. But major advancements or competitors to that is the shuttle systems that are out there. AutoStore is another example of a good solution for that. So again, positive and negative. There are a lot of options to consider for that even one industry vertical, and a lot of suppliers that can provide that type of solution. But I think the goods to person solutions are ones to think about mostly there, where like a shuttle system or an auto store, it's bringing the work for the parts to you and you're standing stationary and not having to walk anywhere. Like the AMR Pick Assist, you are set up in zones and walking a little bit, but the goods to person solutions are a real attractive option for part distribution.
Here's a question that comes up a lot in the adoption of any kind of technology in any organization of any kind, and especially critical here in the DC. The question is, does upgrading from hybrid to full automation require a complete upgrade, or are you able to add on to existing solutions?
Yeah, that's a really that's a great question, and my mind right away goes to integration. It goes to did you know about that initially? Or did you plan for the expansion? Ideally, you kind of had a master plan developed that allowed you to think about the future 5, 7+ years, even 10 years out that you might want to plug in other automation. But if you didn't, I would say it's still very possible to do that. If you've got a good control system in place and a good partner that you've worked with, chances are that partner, as most integrators and even OEMs, have a lot of different solutions they can bring to the table that can integrate to what you've already put in place and take something that you left manual or left mechanized and then automate it. And as long as you have the right infrastructure that you put in place initially, you have the network in place internally, the IT infrastructure, and the space planned out, I think that you can absolutely add on to a system that is hybrid and has a manual or mechanized and then add more automation next to some automation you might already have in place.
Questioner wants to know what is the real/hidden cost of automation? What types of expenses come up that we might not expect?
Well, I think that one of those is the ongoing maintenance that is needed to be put in place. And so making sure you've invested in that annual maintenance program. Something that actually just came up this week is parts and having the necessary parts in house to be able to quickly repair. And one of the newer things that it's not that new, but something I just read about, heard about, and have experienced once is having the 3D modeling capability to be able to create your own parts in the building and have critical parts that you can actually produce yourself on site. But I would say it's the ongoing maintenance that ends up driving and being kind of a hidden cost that you need to think about.
Thank you. Questioner says, how do we recommend clients optimize storage media and product slotting for optimal cycle times and facility utilization?
Yeah, it always comes back to slotting, doesn't it? What's great about some of the automation is the control software itself will automatically keep reslotting and moving like fast movers to the bottom and slow movers to the top and to the back. And some of the automation out there is really good at constantly moving the inventory within the system, whether it's a shuttle or an auto store, and other technologies kind of continuously moving and slotting ongoing. If you're in a mechanized environment, there's available slotting software in the marketplace. There's WMSs that have those type of software slotting applications, because it's important to get the most out of like a pick module or conveyor and zone divert type system. Super important, as the question indicates, to put things in the right place, to balance the workload, to balance the volume across a large automated system or mechanized system. And there's software and there's slotting software and control software that can really help you do that. It's hard to do manually. I know a lot of companies that have built that in-house themselves, but there's more and more software available that helps you do that ongoing slotting optimization. That, if anything, it's a great point to bring up that you need to consider that when you're putting in certainly a manual operation. It's one of those low-hanging fruits that you want to do in a manual operation, is make sure you slot it properly. And in mechanized systems, a lot of those aren't getting the throughput they thought they were going to get or expected to get, simply because they didn't slot it properly, put the right products in the right zones and areas, and they didn't size the locations properly, and they're stocking out constantly. These are all important slotting things. When you get to the automation, the goods to person is still important, and the control software there begins to make that kind of happen real time.
Well, Norm, we've got a lot more great audience questions. Unfortunately, I have to say we're just about out of time, and I'm sure Norm would be only too happy to answer those questions offline for those we did not get to, and I apologize for that, but it's been such a great presentation so far, so packed with information. I guess we can understand why we're at the point we are now. But that does leave me with room for one final question, Norm, and here it is. Asking you please to sum up for us, what is the first step, once again, for DC automation?
Yeah, I probably went a little long in that front part. When I get talking, I get a little excited, and it is a lot to cover. And that's really one of my last points. Is I want to reinforce that there are a lot of options out there, a lot of different automation types, applications, and vendors. It's a real exciting time now. I would suggest that and reinforce that you do the research. You spend time like you're on this webinar, which is great. Look at other webinars. Look at going to websites and suppliers. I'm sure you've heard of the brands, and there's buzz out there about different technologies and applications. Go check out their website. There's going to be videos. There's going to be a lot of great information. You can start to really see where it might fit in your world. And I think don't forget about all the things I've talked about in terms of making sure you're ready by getting your item master in place, making sure you have that key data, make sure you know what your systems are capable of doing. Spend time looking at all those vendors out there. Don't skip that critical testing. I hope that is something that sticks with you following this webinar, is how important control software is and systems are that you have today, and make sure you're ready to integrate and talk and communicate with those things. And here's some, I would say, some quick takeaways are, again, look for those top vendors that you're interested in. Look at their videos, go to webinars, visit some facilities, see some of this automation, and go to trade shows and other events that will really let you learn about this. And hey, I covered a lot. I went a little fast. Don't forget, you can rewatch this show. We put a lot of time and effort into it, tried to summarize some things, but give you some good insight. And I would encourage you to rewatch this. And I thank you again for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. That was some great insights, and there's so much information necessary. We all know how important automation is in the DC, but this is a great guide helping us to approach the challenge and do it right. Thank you so much, Norm, for that. We do have a couple of St. Onge automation blogs available to our audience. There's a QR code right there that you can scan to access those. If you're unable to do it in the next few seconds, don't worry about it. That will be included in the materials sent to all webinar attendees upon conclusion of this show. Here, finally, is how you can reach Norm and find more information from him about what we've talked about today. There is his email, there is his phone number. Norm, great. Thanks again. I got a great education today. I'm going to have to go back over this thing myself to get, to parse all the stuff you were talking about. But thanks again for your time. Thank you, audience, so much for listening in, for sticking with us. Everybody, have a great day.
Thank you.